Never do things just because other people do them. That would really be the motto of your life, would it?
It would, and I remember the incident very much. Never just follow the crowd. Make up your own mind what you want to do, and if necessary, get the crowd to follow you. It was quite a tough advice at the time, but it was the advice that I've remembered.
Because it's noticeable, you say that you had a relatively lonely childhood, you didn't have as much leisure time as other children.
They were very different days, you know. People of your age wouldn't understand that the 30s were much tougher days. First, we hadn't got all of the modern equipment in the house that make it so much easier to look after. Secondly, there wasn't the money for it in any event. Thirdly, we lived very much more in families and in the community. You had every meal at home unless you had people in to tea or then went out to tea. It was a much more wholesome life. That's the only expression
you say
I
wholesome.
can use. A wholesome life.
Although it was
I think in quality it was perhaps better. In material things it was not. I think in quality, I think in talking between people. You see, we hadn't got television. Television stops a lot of discussion between parents and children and between families. And just talking about things as they are. You tend to watch them instead of discuss them. So I think the quality of life was better, but the material standards of life not so good.
What do you think that meant, that upbringing, that relatively austere upbringing meant for you as a politician?
I think it gave you a flavour of really what life was about. And we read a lot. I went up to the library every Saturday morning to get 2 books, one on current affairs or the biography of the time or the comment on the time, and another, the latest novel that the library had got. So we read, and we read newspapers. So you weren't treated to so much what I would call soundbite stuff. You really went into things more deeply.
One of the things it taught you was self-help and persuaded you that property owning or people owning their own home was very important, both politically and socially. Why is it you think now that the Conservative Party has moved away from that?
I think it'll very soon, or I hope it'll very soon move back. It's not only property owning, it's not only owning your own home. I felt that we didn't want a big gap between those who owned property and owned their own houses and had capital and those who didn't. My belief was every person a capitalist, and let's bring it within their grasp. First, by mortgage relief for houses. So you buy your house. Then, after about 25 years, you own your house. And you've got something to pass on eventually to future generations, and they've got something to look forward to. So eventually they don't have to save up a great big amount of money to put down to buy a house, because they'll have some coming to them. It was just a totally different approach. Everyone a capitalist, and spurs for saving as well. And then everyone had an interest in future generations as well.
There's been in your book where you do an interview with Max Hastings, which is called Mrs. Thatcher and the Twilight of the Middle Classes. And you say we should be trying to re-establish our middle class support for being middle class has never been simply a matter of income, but a whole attitude to life, will to take responsibility for oneself. Do you think there are parallels between what you were saying 20 years ago and what you're saying now?
Not parallels, they're fundamental principles. If you take and expect freedom, you must at the same time expect the responsibilities that go with it. You can't have the one without the other. And that was very much the middle class. Yes, they did accept the responsibilities. Yes, they did work for voluntary organizations. Yes, they did accept they were part of the community. This was natural to us.
And do you think that's been lost now?
I think perhaps it's not so prominent as it used to be. I remember answering a question in the House once, and saying, look, even people who were staunchly socialist believed that if you accept freedom, you must accept its responsibilities. I remember one very distinguished playwright saying, freedom incurs responsibility. That's why many men fear it. Oh, said someone on the opposite bench, who said that? And they were amazed when I said, George Bernard Shaw. It's one of my favourite quotes. You accept the freedom, you accept the responsibility. The interest you take in your child at school, the interest you take in looking after people who need extra help. You know them when you live in a community. Maybe you just go along and talk to them.
All sounds quite like what Tony Blair's saying at the moment.
I am a lot older than Tony Blair, and I've been saying it for a very long time. But as I pointed out a moment ago, these warm human things count for both parties. They're not characteristic of one.